President Biden visited Ford Motor Company's electric vehicle plant and pushed for further development of electric cars in the U.S., even though there seems to be little evidence that the public wants it. What Americans do want, though, particularly in the Southeast, is gas. But rather than supporting American pipelines, the president is canceling them here in the U.S. and supporting Russian ones instead, it appears. And the very people he claims to champion are the ones who are getting hurt most by the gasoline shortage and the price increases. With me now to talk about this and more is U.S. Senator Steve Daines from Montana, who serves on the U.S. Senate Energy and Natural Resource Committee. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you, Tony.
So standing in front of electric cars, talking about electric cars when people are standing in line to get gas, reminiscent of the 1970s energy crisis, is this a diversion? Is the president not paying attention to what Americans are facing right now?
Tony, you can't make it up. You look at the hypocrisy coming out of the Biden administration. 6 hours after the president is sworn into office in January, he kills the Keystone Pipeline. Then we saw the Russians hack an American pipeline. And then we saw the president announce he supports a Russian natural gas pipeline that will continue to put the Europeans in a dependency with Russia for natural gas. Tony, I've never seen anything like this. And so the answer to higher prices, higher energy prices and the gas shortage is not more electric cars, it's more American energy. And that means more pipelines, more development of oil, more development of natural gas, because we made such progress. Tony, you remember the 1970s, the War of Yom Kippur. We saw gas lines. We saw the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. We saw the embargo on oil. We saw 18.6% 30-year fixed mortgages in 1981 as a result of inflation caused by rising energy prices. We don't want to go back to those days. But that's where President Biden, he's jamming that electric car he's driving in reverse, moving us back to days that we want to never, ever have to go back to.
This isn't rocket science. When you flood the economy with money, like they're doing with their $6 trillion in various plans that he's proposing, then you shut off the supply of oil. I mean, again, this isn't rocket science. I want to go to the pipeline. Two things. One, the Keystone Pipeline that he shut off. Look, this is environmentally safe. This is good for jobs. The president keeps saying he's going to create millions of jobs with his green energy. I'm not sure how that's going to happen when people are standing in unemployment lines because of the pipeline being shut down. But then unpack also what this pipeline in Russia and the actions the president is taking on that.
Well, let's compare those two pipelines. First of all, we have 2.5 million miles of pipelines running throughout America. Why the president singled out the Keystone Pipeline is a great mystery. I think the reason is, Tony, is it was a payback after the last election to the environmental extremists, these activists that want to see something done here to start shutting off the supply of American energy. But that pipeline enters Montana. It's the first place it comes into. It crosses my state, crosses 6 counties. It would provide hundreds of jobs in Montana. These are great jobs, highest paying jobs we have in eastern Montana with great benefits. Actually, there's 100,000 barrels of oil a day of North Dakota, Montana oil coming in that pipeline. It's the lowest carbon emission means of transportation, because if you don't put it in a pipeline, you'll put it in rail cars or trucks, which emits more carbon than a pipeline. So it's a low carbon option. It generates $80 million of tax revenues every year for the state of Montana. That funds teachers and law enforcement and infrastructure. And speaking of infrastructure, this is a private sector driven infrastructure project that creates jobs and generates tax revenues. It doesn't take taxpayer dollars to execute this project. And so it's mystifying, other than it's a payback to the radical environmentalists. Now you compare that, where he kills a project like that, the president, to Biden now supporting this Russian natural gas pipeline that goes into Germany. I mean, why in the world do we want to put the Europeans in greater dependencies with the Russians when they just hacked our own pipeline here, the Colonial Pipeline, most likely? And so this is such a contradiction, such a hypocrisy, and frankly, it's dangerous policy, not only in terms for our economy, but for national security.
Senator Daines, I want to get you to explain something because I'm just not catching on to what the president is saying. Here's another clip of what he said yesterday in Michigan about creating jobs.
One of the most consequential issues facing the world, the climate crisis. And I made it clear at the outset, as each of these folks came on, what I've long believed. When I think of the climate crisis, beyond its devastation of lives and livelihoods and health of our very planet, I think jobs. I think jobs when I think climate change.
How do you get jobs when you shut down industries?
Well, what I think about, Tony, is the loss of jobs. Yeah, I think about jobs too. I think about job loss. I would like to have President Biden and Vice President Harris, why don't they come with me in my Ford pickup? And it's running on gasoline, by the way, and we'll drive out to eastern Montana. I'd like to have him stand in front of the Montanans that lost their jobs with one stroke of the pen by President Biden. So I think about job loss while he's thinking about jobs. Again, Tony, you just shake your head and say, well, he's telling the American people this flat out isn't true.
Senator, you made reference to infrastructure. There is the president has his massive infrastructure bill, which very little of it is actually infrastructure. It's going to be electric plug-ins for all those cars he's wanting to create. Saying he wants bipartisan support. Apparently, GOP, your colleagues met, a group of them met. It does not appear that there is going to be bipartisan support for their infrastructure bill.
Well, they're looking to push another liberal wish list like they did with the so-called COVID package a couple of months ago. That was $1.9 trillion, Tony. Now they're looking at spending another $2.3 trillion with this so-called infrastructure package. But when you unpack it, it's primarily another liberal wish list: free community college, daycare, spending more money on electric vehicles than on bridges, roads, waterways, ports, airports. That's what infrastructure is. So it's as if they're reading a whole different dictionary, Tony, than the one that at least I learned when I was going to college. So I'm a bit skeptical. I think these bipartisan talks may be just a way to try to appease the American people, saying, yeah, we want to see Washington working together. But as we've seen from the Biden administration and from Schumer and Pelosi, it's their way or the highway. And that's what they have done so far to frankly, the detriment of our country.
Senator Daines, I want to move on to another issue where there is pretty strong opposition. In fact, the push for what I call the federal takeover of elections, HR 1, S1, failed to get out of the Senate committee. But now you have two of your colleagues that are working on a fallback plan that's just as dangerous, in my view. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, working on going back to the Voting Rights Act and changing that to limit what states can do. In fact, requiring all states to get, as I understand what they're proposing, pre-clearance to changing districts and election laws in their states. I mean, to me, that's a federal takeover of elections.
Tony, here's what's going on. The left wants to take over this country via a power grab. That was the source of the DC statehood debate. It's a power grab of the U.S. Senate. That's why they want to pack the Supreme Court. It's a power grab of the Supreme Court. Now they want to execute another power grab, and that is take over the elections. This is another attempt to really undermine federalism when it comes to elections. Our founding fathers, remember, placed a high priority on state legislatures as it relates to the way that elections are conducted. This is a solution in search of a problem. Remember, looking at this last election, Americans voted in record numbers. The 2020 turnout was the highest in a century. So tell us why we need to change the laws. African-American turnout in 2020 was up 3% over 2016. Think about a state like Montana and other states. What we did, thanks to our great new Republican governor, Greg Gianforte, the first Republican governor we had in 16 years, a dear friend of mine, they passed a law last month that simply says you got to have a photo ID to vote. Now, Tony, if you come out to Montana, I took you hunting or fishing, you got to produce a photo ID to get a fishing license or a hunting license. You want to rent a car, you produce a photo ID. You want to rent a motel room, you produce a photo ID. It's not asking too much to produce a photo ID to vote. In fact, over 70% of the American people support that idea. So we passed that bill. Under what they're trying to do with this Manchin alternate bill would say, you've got to go to this, this oversight group to get permission to put in place some of these changes in the laws that our states thankfully are doing to make sure we have more integrity in our elections. And so this is just a backdoor and another power grab for the left.
But by the way, Senator, I do have my photo ID. So whenever you're ready to go hunting, just let me know and I'll be out there.
I'd be glad to.
Give me the sense of Republicans. Are they going to stand firm on this? Because you described it perfectly. This is a takeover. Are they going to stand very quickly?
Yeah, I think they will. Remember, it's going to take, unless they blow up the filibuster, it'll take 10 Republicans to join 50 Democrats. I think we'll be able to stop it.
All right. Senator Steve Daines, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tony.